Hi, I'm John Hartman. I write the book review column for Chess Life magazine. And here, this is a slightly different project, but I'm going to start creating videos to help people understand how to use ChessBase. And as part of that, today I'd like to do a video that takes a look at ChessBase 15, which just launched today. There are some interesting new features, some neat little hidden things that I've discovered. And so I'd like to walk you through some of it, look at the history of ChessBase, at least the last few iterations, and try to explain what's new and important here. So to give you a little bit of a sort of a jaunt through ChessBase history, the first real modern version of ChessBase that I want to look at is ChessBase 12, which we're going to open up over here. I've got a second screen going, so if I look off to my left, that would be stage right. I'm not a theater person. That should explain to you what I'm doing. This is ChessBase 12. It came out in 2012, and as you can see over here, I've got a list of some of the features that ChessBase 12 started with. ChessBase 12 had some innovations. It began to link to deep analysis, which I think is was an attempt by ChessBase to compete with Chess Assistant and Aquarium. Cloud analysis, linking to engines that may have been remote or that you could rent time on. And there's also similarity search that they introduced in ChessBase 12, which would allow you to search a game, search a database for similar structures to a game that you may be looking at. So if you wanted to see if there was an analog to an endgame you had seen, you could look and see if there were any other examples of a similar structure in your database of choice. So ChessBase 12, 2012, for me, this is probably it was a fairly large advance over ChessBase 10 or ChessBase 11. And then with the next two issues that came out, I think the changes were more incremental. So with ChessBase 13, which I reviewed at my website, chessbookreviews.wordpress.com. You can also get there by going to firstlookchess.com, at least for the moment. With ChessBase 13, we began to see more of an integration with the cloud. So there was a link to ChessBase's web account up here. So you could have cloud database engines. You could use cloud engines. You could create databases that you stored in the cloud, which could be useful. If you're trying to share data with someone. There was also some things in terms of analysis jobs. So if you wanted to, for example, analyze some games. Well, actually, let's see if we can find a way to do this. If you wanted to analyze some games, you could do some deep analysis in any given position. So you could ask the computer to run through analyses of various sorts, and it would sort of iteratively go deeper. So ChessBase 13, again, an improvement, probably incremental. ChessBase 14, more of the same. So ChessBase 14. With ChessBase 14, you saw increased web integration, tactical analysis, which previously was only in one of the versions of Fritz. So, for example, if you pull up this game and you want to analyze it, you could do a tactical analysis that would detect blunders or various types of small tactics in the game. Previously, that was only included in Fritz, auto analysis feature, and now it had made its way into the full ChessBase product. You also had some assisted analysis, so that if you were inputting a game, there would be color coding for various squares that might be important. The game input mode, which is actually pretty nice if you're having to input games from a tournament. So let's say you wanted to include a game here, you could go to input mode, and it takes away some features, and it also basically duplicates the last set of tournament data that you have. So if you're putting in 20 games from one round of a tournament you're running, it saves you a little bit of time. So this is a nice feature. So ChessBase 13 came out in 2014. ChessBase 14 came out in 2016, and I guess the development cycle continues in 2018 with ChessBase 15. So the question is really what's new with ChessBase 15? I'm not going to give you a full tutorial on how to use ChessBase here. That's going to be in a series of other videos that I'll be doing in the near future. And in those videos, I'm going to try to cover everything from the basic nuts and bolts of how to set up a database, how to copy games from one database to another, how to edit your database files, how to install and set up engines, how to name your files, how to maintain them. Basically the nitty-gritty things that no one really seems to talk about when using ChessBase. I'll also be talking about the various tasks you might want to use the ChessBase for, preparing for an opponent, analyzing your own games, using the auto-analysis feature, trying to understand that, creating an opening book, which can be very useful, particularly if you have access to correspondence games, which are an increasingly important source of opening knowledge, especially at very serious levels. We'll talk about ways to create your own opening files, search for different structures, study your own games, use the online services. Basically anything I can think of that ChessBase is useful for, we'll try to find a way to make a video about it. But my purpose today really is to try to look at some of the new features that we see in ChessBase 15. I've been using the beta for 10 days now, and usually I'm the sort of person who tends to or wants to let other people be beta testers. So when Windows comes out, a new version of Windows comes out, I'm happy to wait 3 to 6 months to let everybody else work out all the bugs and save me the trouble. ChessBase 15, I've been pretty happy with its stability. In fact, I used it over the weekend to do a lot of work while I was running a tournament, including inputting games and even some small quirks that I'd seen with previous ChessBase versions, like occasional write errors to files that were saved in Dropbox. I haven't seen those here. That's not to say that errors don't exist. I have had a crash when I was trying to run 2 instances of ChessBase at the same time, of ChessBase 15 at the same time. But for most purposes, and I think for most users, on its launch date, it's pretty stable. And I suspect that's because it basically looks like and is based on ChessBase 14, which is a mature product at this point. There are some new features, and we should try to take a look at some of those now. I do want to note one quirk I'm noticing here. For some reason, every time I open ChessBase, it wants to include a correspondence database here. So I've got this old correspondence database, 2015, which is found. It's certainly not the most current version of a correspondence database I have. But every time I remove it, let's see if it does it again. I close ChessBase. Let's see if it does it, or if it's going to, it pops right back up. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. That might be something that the developers want to look at. It's a tiny quirk, but it is a quirk nonetheless. So that being said, and after making a fool of me for saying that there's no issues with this release, let's try to take a look at some of the things that are going on and are new in ChessBase 15. So one of the first things that they're that the developers and ChessBase.com has talked about in their promotional materials is the new replay training. And in fact, if I remember when I installed this, now you guys are going to get to see the innards of my my files. They created a, where is it, training? Yes. There's a little database that can be optionally installed. It's called Best Games for Replay Training. It should be in your ChessBase folder under Training if it installs. And it may ask you actually to install it as an additional material or as an additional database when you install the program. So if we open this up, we see a whole bunch of games here that are pre-analyzed by the tactical analysis. Again, tactical analysis is a feature that I think was introduced in ChessBase 14, brought over from Fritz. And basically it's just like auto-annotate from Fritz. It's a little more polished, and there are some reasons you might want to use the older Fritz version, which basically just spits out lines of numerical analysis. If you're doing some heavy opening analysis, that might be more useful. But for most people, I think this is actually a probably pretty useful way to have your games analyzed. So let's just choose one here. Oh, I don't know. I've never heard of these people. Surin and Mufang. I've got no idea who they are. So this is a game, I guess, from 1919. It must be very interesting. And for those of you who've used ChessBase before, you notice there's a tab here that seems to be missing. It used to be If we go back, actually, we can pull up a different instance. Hopefully we don't crash the computer by having 2 copies of this up at once. It used to be you'd look up something like, oh, I don't know, reference, table, or training. So training was just a way that the moves were hidden so that you'd make a move and you could play guess the move in the way that Purdy used to recommend you do. Instead of having to have the index card in the book, you simply just guess the move as they come through. And this can be very useful for group training sessions. You can get kids to get very excited about guessing what move is next. It's also good for, well, pretty much anybody to try to figure out what the master played, and if it doesn't match what you thought they should play, why they probably played the better move. So this has been replaced in ChessBase 15 with replay training. And already here you can see something different. So there's a score, and there are hints that you can have. And it'll also ask you to, there's also a hint board down here too. Basically what's going to happen is you're going to try to guess what the moves are, and it will give you, it'll keep track of the points you can earn. And you'll notice, by the way, there's an engine move here being described. And it's saying that black has an edge, or there's a depth here. That's because built into ChessBase 15, and I suspect in 14, but I'm not 100% sure about this, is a specially modified engine to handle the assisted analysis, to handle the instant evaluation profile that we'll look at in a little while. And I don't know if this is actually public knowledge, but I asked the developers and they didn't say I couldn't tell you. So the engine is actually based on Ginkgo, which is a closed source project by Frank Schneider, I do believe. So this is an engine that isn't actually generally available, and together with ChessBase, the author has tweaked it so that it's, I don't think it prunes as much. I think it has a much wider search so that it can assess all of the various moves that might be played by someone here. So, for example, if I play a6, which is probably not the best move in this position, it's going to tell me my move is no good, and it's a mistake of 0.7 pawns. So let's see, what could I try here? Well, let's see. If it's 19-19, let's assume they take the pawn. He takes f4. Okay, let my pawn roll. So it gives me a hint. And what could that possibly mean? G5? Sure. H4, G4. I am not a I am anything but a King's King's Gambit player, so this is going to be interesting. What is the move here? Bishop G7, H5, F3. I have absolutely no idea. Let's see. It's using. Oh, so this is interesting. So it does give me this hint down here too. If I look at the radar board, this will give me the position a few moves out, and so I can see. Okay, well maybe Knight F6 is played. Maybe. Oh, it doesn't look. Maybe D5 seems to have been played at some point. Knight F6. Let's try Knight F6. Bishop C4. Okay. Drive a piece away, it's telling me. D5. He takes D5. Bishop to D6 certainly looks logical. And now what? Use the radar board to play the opening. Well, and you notice, by the way, that the depth is decreasing as we go further in. I suspect that's because the position is slightly more complicated. So the engine is taking more time to try to assess the position. So what could I play here? C6? I'm really not very sure. C6, Knight H5, C6? Nope, that is a mistake. Okay, so use the radar board to play. Knight to H5. Got no idea. Not a King's Gambit player. I play old man chess at this point in my life. So this is enough to sort of give you a hint of what's going on here. And, you know, when they give you this database, it's actually not a bad idea to sit there, and you could use these for testing yourself. You could use these just to play through and enjoy. It seems to be a fairly good overview of some interesting games in chess history. So Byrne and Fischer, bunch of Tal games, Anand Polgar, 96, some Anand Kasparov games. There's a lot here that you might want to look at, and it's definitely worth your time doing so. Now, what's interesting is that you can also use this feature for opening training. So, as an example, there was a time when I put together a I went through Peter Fiddler's Grunfeld videos and put literally every single move that he talked about in those videos for Chess24 into ChessBase format. No, you cannot have it. So if I were trying to still play the Grunfeld, I could, for example, start in this position. Let's say I start in this position, which is a pretty main line. And by the way, you'll notice at the bottom, this is where the instant evaluation pops up. We'll talk about that in a moment. I can go to replay training, and then I can switch on repertoire. And it'll say the loaded game has, okay, 368 moves. And now I don't want to play white, I want to play black. So it has chosen a move, and if we go back to the notation, there's going to be points in the notation where it breaks, where where there are different lines that are played. And during the repertoire training, it'll help you go through all of them, but I think it weights the frequency with which it plays certain moves against you, according to how much analysis you have. So, Rook b4 here isn't a move that I have a lot of analysis on. Apparently, Peter thought it was not the best move on the board. Bishop g5 seems to be better if we look at the opening stats. And we should actually open a book here. Oh, I put them all on here. That's right. I put them all in I have a SSD drive that I put a bunch of the chess data on, so to make it go a little faster. So if we look at the statistics, we see that according to all of the publicly available TWIC games, Bishop g5 is really the only move here that's been played. Bishop c5 has been played once. And the files actually show you this. Bishop g5, the other moves you could try are rook b4, rook e1, bishop c5 apparently transposes. So, yeah, if we go back to replay training, so now what am I supposed to play here? Let's think about this. Pay attention to bishop g5 takes e7. This is the hint they're giving me. Don't remember. Let's think. Rook e8. This move has not been played yet. Okay. Wait for a hint. No, thank you. I will go back and look. b6. Well, that really doesn't help me cover e7 there, Ginkgo. But that's all right. Repertoire move is b6, and it also gives me some points here. It says I'm still in theory. So he's attacking my rook. I assume I have to move it to e8. Move a rook. b6. Threaten to take a piece. Is this the piece sack line? My queen is attacked. Yeah, I have no idea. You can see why I didn't take up the Grunfeld full time. It's very, very complicated, and my memory is not what it used to be. Moral of the story is that you can actually, I think you can get a sense of what this repertoire feature can do. If you spend a lot of time with it, I suspect it would be very useful for you to help you memorize your chosen repertoire lines. And if you're concerned with the simplicity of the previous system, where it just said where it just said training, you can actually, I think you can just close the notation and then just ask the students, ask them what they want to play in a given position. It's a little clunky, I think, and I can see situations in which I'd prefer the previous implementation of training, but maybe that's something they'll put back in a future update or a future service pack. Fingers crossed. So replay training and repertoire training is a really, really important part of ChessBase 15. For me, I think one of the most interesting parts is some of the search features they've implemented, and most certainly the most important one for my purposes. I do a lot of teaching. Well, not a lot. I do some teaching. Is what they call the tactical search. So let's open the newest issue of TWIC, which just came out. And let's take a look. By the way, you'll notice that for those of you who have used ChessBase for a long time, there's some tabs missing here. There's some search keys that are missing. I know search keys are not as popular as they used to be, but they still have some value. So if you go to File and Options, And if you go to miscellaneous, there are a number of things here that you can fix, and one of these is theme keys. So when you click that on, and you set it, and we go back, and we close it up, open it back up, all of a sudden these theme keys are here. None of them are installed at the moment, but you can install them just by going here and selecting the key of your choice. So I just downloaded this issue of Twik right before I started streaming or recording. And let's say that I wanted to find some fresh material for someone I was teaching, and I wanted to find some double attacks. So the first thing I can do is go to this filter list feature, and you'll notice that there's a few things here. First of all, they've simplified filters so that if, let's say, you're searching for the games of Carlsen, pretty popular right now given that the World Championship match is going on, it doesn't give me anything. That's very strange. Magnus. No, nothing. Why is that? Oh, strange. Text. How about... What am I doing wrong? Well, we'll skip this. Might be something they need to look at, that the text search is not working immediately. But maybe if we go to players, that might do it too. Filter list. Different dialogue, but it should find me. Yeah, Carlsen, Magnus. Anyway, so the text box notwithstanding, you can go to advanced, and this is basically the filter games tab that all of us are familiar with. They've added some new things here, and most importantly for me is this maneuvers page. You can do things with attacks, so you can set up, if you want to see if a pawn is being attacked by certain configurations of pieces and defended by certain configurations, you can set that here. But for me, this is probably the most important. Let's say we want to find all the double attacks in Twik 1253. By the way, if you like this video, do me a favor, go to theweekinchess.com and give Mark Crowther some money. Mark Crowther does incredibly important work in the chess world, and he gets very little credit for it, so please support what he's doing with a PayPal donation. Yeah, we'd all be a lot poorer chess-wise if it wasn't for our Monday download of chess games. So please go support Mark Crowther. Anyway, public service announcement over. Back to ChessBase 15. Let's say we want to find the double attacks. So you'll notice that we find quite a few of them, and that's because, well, there's two reasons for this. I mean, first of all, the program is literally finding all of the double attacks, and that means that not all of them are going to be particularly interesting or tactically advanced. But if we just open the first, just open the first one, and we'll put the notation tab back, it lands on the move that is a double attack, and indeed we do see that the rook is attacking the king and the pawn. Double attack. So if we go back, it's not necessarily the case that we're going to find anything interesting tactically here. So you may not be able to find something immediately useful for your students depending on their level. But I can see how even something like this might be, if you've got a 700 player who is just learning what a double attack is, this might be a position that could be useful. If you hit F11 and we just go to the next game, it's going to take us to exactly the next position. So here, bishop takes b2 is indeed a double attack. Okay. Knight to d5. Oh, this is interesting. This might be something worth looking at here. So f4, right? Bishop takes, rook takes, knight e7 check. Oh man, that is this might be a rather nice position to use, and you can mark this. So when I've done a little bit of this, I might just throw a diagram in here with a right click. You can also go to the bottom of the screen and insert a diagram that way. There's a little insert diagram here, and I might just write something about, when I get to knight d5, I might just put double attack. And then, when I go back later, after replacing it, I still, for what it's worth, don't particularly like the way the ChessBase has collapsed the replace and save features into one mechanism. in ChessBase 12 and 13, it used to be separate, so you could replace a game or save a game separately. Now they've made it one button, and for old timers like me, it's a little confusing, or it can be a little confusing even now. But I'm slowly acclimating. So anyway, the point of this is you can actually go back now, and if you've put this into the text of the game, if you filter for something like double attack, well, we won't find it that way. If we go to advanced and we reset it, and then we go to annotations, if you look for the text, we'll find the game that we put the double attack in. So this is a pretty handy way to find some tactics pretty quickly. As we saw, there's a lot that you'll find a lot of double attacks pretty quickly. Let's reset this. And let's go to find something a little more esoteric. Back rank. Now you notice it's not finding them, or hardly any of them. It's found 1, 2. And it takes some time to do these searches, even I think with the search booster that may be built. It takes a little time to search these because it's literally going through every game and using its internal heuristics to find the different tactics. But so you can see here, for example, let's see where the back rank is. Queen takes a7. Not a classic back rank, but it might work anyway. Does it? Bishop takes, oh, okay, bishop takes f3. Rook takes, rook, ah, now this is nice. And so I assume after, and we'll take that back. Thank you, ChessBase, for putting t back. And after this, you'll notice with the assisted analysis, by the way, it's showing me where the best moves are. Yeah, queen d1 checkmate. Okay, so this might be a interesting tactical idea for you to try with your students. This might be a position that you want to keep. Again, you would just put something in the text that, at least this is the way I do it, you put something in the text that signifies the tactic you're using or the tactic you're interested in, and then you can search for it later with the filter. Knight to b3. Queen takes, I assume this is the idea. Anyway, you get the idea. And this can be very, very useful. I think you can see pretty quickly how a teacher could use this in preparing material, or, you know, I could also see how someone like me, who is trying to get better, trying is the operative word, I could go through my blitz games from ICC or chess.com or Lichess and just run the tactical filter through it and see things, you know, if I'm missing double attacks or where they are. It's very easy to mine your own data with this. So very, very useful feature, and one that I think more people are really going to want to use. So there are some other things you can do with this too. Some of the searches you might look for are also faster here. The reference tab has been sped up. So let's just randomly go. So MegaBase 2019, which we're going to look at very briefly at the end of this. Let's just find a game in a mainline opening. Okay, so this is some sort of Dutch defense. If you want to know what's been played in this position before, you can just go to the reference tab, and it's pretty rapidly pulling up all the games that will be there. So we see in this position, castling is the main move, and there aren't many others. Let me make sure that I've actually set this as my reference database. It is set as my reference database. Excellent. They seem to have sped this up, I won't say dramatically, but there does seem to be a speed increase compared to previous versions. And again, I think it's because there's a new search booster. So if we go to MegaBase 19, you'll notice in MegaBase 18, which again is up to date, there is no, basically it's these old traditional files, and you've got a reference booster to the RBO, RB1, RB2 files. in MegaBase 19, we've got these new types of search boosters, and they're pretty big. I mean, this is what, 2.5 gigabytes, and this is 1.25. And it took about 4 minutes on a relatively fast quad-core machine to generate these. When you download MegaBase, it doesn't come with it. So I think these together, they help with the tactical search, but I think they also speed up the reference. So in this position, you know, in the opening book, we can see there are, and again, this is an opening book I created for myself out of Twit Games. Bishop e6 is the main move. Knight a5 is also played. If we go here, it runs pretty quickly through MegaBase, and it points out that Bishop e6 and Knight a5 are roughly equally played, have both been played in 2018. You can also check out things in this reference tab that are kind of interesting. So popularity, if you want to see when this move or when this position was popular, you can go back and see a graph of roughly how much had been played compared to other years. For some reason, in 2009, it got a little popular, and in 2012, no one played it. I don't know. If you want to look at the endgames that come out of it, apparently out of this position, 31.5% will get to an endgame. Rook versus rook, rook and bishop versus rook and bishop. Very typical. One other thing that's interesting here is the Plan Explorer. So ChessBase will also mine the games in your reference database and show you typical piece maneuvers. So the knight on c6 tends to go to a5, sometimes taking on b3. The bishop on c8 goes to e6, generally speaking. It's a nice way to sort of see where your pieces are supposed to go and give you a sense of some of the piece paths that might be important here. So all these searches are really, I think, very important. I think you can get some use out of them if you are diligent. It's certainly not, you know, it's pretty advanced stuff, but then again, I mean, generally speaking, ChessBase is a tool for very serious chess players. So I think there's some things here that a serious player could make good use of. What else is there? The instant evaluation pane, and this is, at first I think this started out in Fritz, and I think this actually it's an import from Fritz. And at first I have to admit I wasn't particularly excited about it. And part of my thinking was, well, you know, if you're working on a laptop, to have this engine running in the background it eats up your battery. And the more I thought about it, and as I looked at the resources it used, I don't think this is actually true. I think that it's, generally speaking, at least on my laptop, I saw it only using 1 core and not a whole lot of RAM. So it's not terribly memory intensive. You can also, I mean, you can always turn it off if you don't like it. You can just go up to view. I'm sorry, you can go into your options and you can turn it off. So in these features here, you can turn off the assisted analysis, all the legal moves. You can turn off the instant analysis. It's very configurable, which is good. So if you don't like this, you don't have to use it. But again, what I found really is that it's not that resource intensive. And it does give you a sort of interesting, you know, a very quick sense of how the game went. White advantages are in green. Let's see if we can, I don't think there's any way to make this bigger. Black advantage is in red. And I'm curious about what this is here. I think the yellow signifies something along the lines of a forced win or an eventual win. It's not hard to see how that might be true in this particular situation. I guess this was a blitz game, which is fascinating. And as you play through, by the way, if you notice, I know the print is, or the screen might be a little low here, or the resolution might be a little low given how big your screen is. But there's a little black notch here that sort of goes along with you. So as you go through, you can sort of see where you are in the game relative to the graph, which is pretty handy. It's nice to get a quick sense of a game, especially, you know, let's say you're someone sends you a game and you just want to sort of get a sense of how they played. It can be a nice way to just take a quick look and see what's going on. Again, just pulling up a random one. And you can see Basically, it's going through. I mean, that's what 4 seconds, 5 seconds of time to get through move 23. So it's not a lot of processing time, but it adds something. And again, you can turn it off if you don't like. You can also just modify this. So if you want to change how many seconds per move you're doing, you can up it. One seems to be plenty on a modern machine. But if you're working with older hardware, or if you want a more accurate, I suppose, pane, you can up the amount of time it uses. That's pretty useful. And again, I think the interesting thing is that it's using as I mentioned before, an engine that isn't publicly available, Ginkgo, by Frank Schneider. I hope I'm getting that name right. Yes, Frank Schneider. Actually, I do have it over here in my little list of things that are worth talking about. Excellent. A few more things, then I want to take a quick look at ChessBase, at MegaBase, and show you a really neat thing that I think is new to 15. It may have been in 14, and I just never noticed it, but it's really, really useful. They do have ray tracing here, which I assume is a way to create a movie from a game. So let's say I fell in love with, I don't know, Rosen against Spanton from the Guernsey Open. I can go to File, and I can go to Publish this game, and I can create all sorts of different things. So first of all, I could create an animated GIF. It is GIF, not GIF. I don't care what anyone says. G goes G. At least that's what my daughter's nursery rhymes say. You can create a GIF that you might be able to put up on YouTube. In fact, I did this with game 1 of the Carlsen-Caruana match, and people are like, that's great, you can do that. I think other programs will let you do that. Chess.com may let you do it, but it's nice to have it built into ChessBase. You can create a movie with a 2D board, with a 3D board, and with a ray-traced board. I'm not going to do that because I think it takes quite a bit of processing time, and this video is already long enough as it is. But if you're interested in creating this sort of thing, have at it. I have heard that there may be some problems right now with AMD processors and the ray tracing. So if you're using an AMD processor, my other computer is a Ryzen chip, which if you're looking to build a chess computer, I wholeheartedly recommend the Ryzen line of chips. It's fantastic bang for the buck. If you're using AMD, you may want to hold off on ray tracing, but if not, or, well, even if you're adventurous, you may want to give it a go. But this chess movie thing is actually, I think it's a pretty nice way to, if you wanted to create a movie with a 2D board, you can just put it on your desktop. It'll create a movie. See how long it takes. It just runs through. And this is what it looks like. Nice bell and whistle. I'm not entirely sure how I'd use it. Certainly creating the GIF for Twitter or for Facebook seems more immediately useful to me, but I also may lack imagination. So anyway, these are the main new features of ChessBase 15. I do want to look at one other thing, and it has to do with, well, I'll show you when we get there. MegaBase 2019 has come out, and if you'll notice, MegaBase, including the 2 updates that have come out now, there are 7,635,259 games in here. If we look at MegaBase 2018, again, fully up to date with all the updates that you get, there are 7,471,984 games. What that means is that there are games in MegaBase that are brand new to the ChessBase ecosystem. And when we go in and sort of look at what's built in here, that's not at all what I wanted to do. I didn't want to sort the games. What you can do, if you're ever sort of looking at the various entries, like the names, and you're trying to figure out how to resize them, you can always go to optimize column widths. You can right click and then just hit the top, and it will shrink them down and make them all uniform. If you ever go to the source tabs, you can get a sense of what came from where. And in particular, if we do it by date, you'll notice that built into every new version of MegaBase are all the ChessBase magazines. Um, I guess some games from a Tarrasch database that may be forthcoming. These just may simply be, and again, we'll optimize these. I do believe these might be games that are annotated by Tarrasch, so that's kind of cool if you speak German, which I don't. But, you know, you can still play through the lines. These are Tarrasch's notes. There must be some value here. But for me, what's interesting is this EXT 2019. And I assume basically what this is all of the games that are new to the database and that are not from ChessBase magazine or were not in previous years. Some of these games will be in the updates that you got in 2018, but others will be new. And you can see here, I mean, there are games from 1877, you know, a lot of team championships. So Belgian championships, the Ukrainian championship from 1971, a lot of Olympiad games, the Women's Olympiad from 1984, and you can go all the way through to 2010, 2015 Edmonton championship. It's startling the number of random events that somehow end up in MegaBase. It's pretty impressive when you think about all the games that are out there and the people who have to put these games into the computer. So hats off to everybody who's doing conservation work. I know how important it is, and I know how hard it is doing inputting games here in Nebraska. But yeah, really good stuff. At any rate, the reason I show you this is that there's a really neat new feature that I have not seen before. So let's say you are going through a list of games, and let's say you just wanted to extract the new games from this EXT 2019 source tab. You can right click and you can go to output, and there are a lot of things you could do here. You could publish them to the web, which is a one-click way to publish a game to ChessBase's internal website, like View Chess, I think it used to be called, and now I'm not sure what it's called, but it works very well, although I would say probably at least 10% of the time I get an error after publishing. But, the next day it works, so I guess beggars can't be choosers. What you can do here, though, that is new is this thing called database. And so what it does is it lets you create a new database. I just created a little CBH file called EXT 2019 games. And it's literally copying those games to that database right now. So previously you might have had to create a new database, copy all of these to the clipboard, and then copy the clipboard to the new database. Basically what ChessBase has done here is removed a couple steps. And so it may not be useful, I mean, how often are you going to go through and grab 300,000 games out of a database? But let's say I've got a young student who I like to, when I'm done with a lesson, I will give them the games or the things that we looked at. So if I go to this particular database here for a young student named Sai, I can say, okay, well, we looked at this Smyslov game, these two Smyslov games, and I can now just do this. I can just create a new database, and we'll just make a little temporary file here. Again, you can always change the folder, but I can just make a little thing here, a little database, and it'll immediately copy them over. And if we go to open that up, it's right there. Really, really easy. And again, this may have been in ChessBase 14 and I never noticed it, but I think it's new to 15. And as someone who emails people a lot of games or tries to create databases to give to people, this is really neat. So I was very, very happy to see this. All in all, MegaBase 2019, as I said, about 7.6 million games, 72,000 give or take are annotated. And you can go through and see who the annotators are. So Agar has 30, Alyekin has 118. If we look at who has the most, that would be Lubomir, however you say his name, Fatoknik, with almost 5,000 games annotated. Michal Marin has 1,600 games. The Turkish Grandmaster Atalik has almost 1,400 games. It seems like every game he plays ends up getting in here. So if we look at this, yeah, almost every game he seems to have played in the last year is annotated here. Great for people who are potentially going to play him. John Donaldson has a number of games, and a lot of these are actually from tournaments that are played at the Mechanics Club in San Francisco, the Mechanics Chess Club in San Francisco. So amateur games, which can be very useful for teaching if you ever wanted to take a look at these. That reminds me, there is one other thing in here that is pretty neat, and I have seen this used before, and then I will end this video. Sometimes if you're searching for instructive games, you want to find games with big rating differences. So where a grandmaster is playing someone who is, you know, potentially, well, an amateur. We'll put it that way. So if you go to game data, you can actually choose this difference tab. So let's say we wanted to create a difference of 800 points. And we can actually go through and find games where one player outrates the other by 800 points. So a lot of simul games, that makes a lot of sense. Vicianon's simul against someone in Kazakhstan, I guess. Games from open tournaments. So these can be a lot of fun to look at if you're trying to get a sense of how a grandmaster just outplays an amateur and what the differences in strength and style might be. I've been doing this video so long that people are calling me, which I think is a sign for me to end it. Anyway, MegaBase 2019, just like BigBase, you get updates every week. And yeah, it's a very useful way to keep up on your games by getting those updates. Any event, this has been a much longer tour of ChessBase than I thought I would give, but with luck, you found this useful. And in the coming weeks, I'll be doing basically A to Z, stem to stern tutorial on how to use this program to get better. Beginning with basically just the nuts and bolts. How to copy games, how to create and maintain databases, naming conventions. If you're creating an openings file, like let's say I've done with white d4, how you might want to put all these things together and how you might want to label them to best keep track of things. So now you know all the things I'm going to play against d4, but I don't play d4 anymore. Yeah, we'll go through all that, and we'll start with very basic things, and we will eventually get you to hopefully a place where you feel like you're an expert in ChessBase. At any rate, this video has gone on now for almost 50 minutes, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you find it useful. And yeah, keep track of this new project, which I'm calling First Look Chess. You can go to firstlookchess.com right now. It just redirects to my review website. But in the days and weeks ahead, I'll be building a web presence there as well that is attached to my review work. Certainly not specifically linked to what I do for Chess Life, but is also certainly not distinct from it either. So yeah, it all sort of works together in hopefully what will be a very educational and useful way. So thanks for watching, and yeah, I hope you have a good night.